And our first artist is Fran Gallun. Hello, Fran.
Hi everybody. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and the work in this show?
Yeah, sure. So the work in this show is all from 2020 and 2021. And I will say that the COVID thing, which is still ongoing, it was had a lot of silver linings, and one of them was reduction of many other obligations and possibilities. So I'm so lucky to be able to be in the studio because nobody else is there. And so I got a lot of work done. These are all fanciful still lifes. And I will say that way back in the 80s, I was painting still life, but from the actual objects and the tabletop setups, and also very big, brushy, colorful, expressive canvases. And through many iterations that too many to, oops, sorry, too many to go now. I came back to still life about 5 years ago, and it was kind of a shock. I had been doing a lot with really imaginary landscape and the horizontal line and all these things that some of you may recall. But and on top of one of those appeared some vessels and objects, and it was a shock. It was like, hey, I did this. I can't do this again. But it was back, and it's very different because I'm, except for this little grouping that you see now, which are tiny, they're 5 by 7, they're all made up. So they're all imaginary still life with the vessel shape, lots of surface work. This one is a monoprint, is a officially titled multiple drop monoprint, monotype, I should say, because there's no etching on the plexiglass plate that I work on as the surface. So these are cut out stencils, and each color represents another run through the press. And it also finishes with collage. Maybe you can make out some collage pieces on top of that. So I have been using the press at Fleischer Art Memorial, where I teach. So it's available to me, which is really nice. And I've found that is a very, it's always wonderful to be able to shift gears a little and try another medium, sometimes sculpture, sometimes a whole other shift to clarify what's happening for you. These are colored pencil on painted paper. So the paper was quite dark, like navy blue, and here are those horizontal stripes. This is a big part of my work over these years, these bands of objects, shapes, and these were really, I have to say, doodles. I love the word doodle, and I respect it very much because I think it's important to just let your hand move and keep out of the way. So this colored pencil on painted paper, there was that month, if you recall, in COVID, like May of 2020, and the advice was don't go out, don't go anywhere, just it's going to be on the rise and all that. So I brought some simple materials home, and I did these at home. That's very, very different for me. The studio space is the sanctuary. So anyway, these were paired next to the monotype very brilliantly by Tina. I wouldn't have thought of that. So that's my moment to say thank you for doing such a beautiful job with arranging the work and being so thoughtful about it and making it look better than it does in the studio. These big canvases, there are 4 of them in this show, and they are all old still life. And I've painted, now I'm painting over a lot of the old canvases from the old days, not all of them. Some of them will survive, but these have been painted over, sometimes with a color, sometimes with gesso. And then these images of these archetypal vessel shapes, leaf patterns, you can see the collage in that. So everything is acrylic and collage. When I ended the time of doing those big still lifes, they were oil back in the 80s. I shifted to work on paper, and that was so liberating to be off the canvas and to be able to, oh gosh, tear it up or paint over it or add to it. And Len, don't do that, Len. Thanks. So collage has been part of my work for since the 90s, really. Some of it in 3-dimension and now back in 2-dimension, but I love the freedom of collage. There's just something about being able to add these shapes that is very freeing for me. And you may notice that some are also the stencil shape. You can see next to the cup, there are 2 vessels, bottles that are one in front of the other, and those are from shapes, patterns that I have used over and over. So so they appear, those particular, there are many shapes that appear and reappear. And the bigger one behind it is actually newspaper. I've started using newspaper also, which I find very amusing. A lot of how I feel about the work is recycling. I'm thrilled to be using these old canvases again. I love the collage. The collage is mostly, except for the newspaper, my own painted paper. And there are piles of scraps and things and pieces. And this work in this show, I felt very, well, much freer, really. I just let myself, just do it. And not, oh gosh, you know, get into this whole conversation of does it fit in with the other work, and is it, all those things that we tell ourselves or wonder about or worry about. Yeah, so I really let it rip. That's how it felt to me. Anyway, and in between these are also small, like 6x8, and I would take the pen and ink I love and just draw. That's the wall of the studio, but kind of a takeoff with other and the do a little drawing, these little made up still lifes, and just really, really very playful. And this one is, you can see it's like the pink still life that we just looked at. This is a little drawing of it, trying to decide what's going on here and what do I need to change. And you may notice that that blue bowl isn't there anymore, and neither are the grapes and so forth. Right, and the other one in the upper left is also wondering about it. So doing a little drawing of it. So I don't sketch or plan anything ahead of time. It's kind of backwards. Sometimes I'll do a little one to understand what's happening in a bigger one. Yeah, so this is a view of my studio. That's its title. That's a big table. I work, a lot of times I work flat on these two big 4x8 tables. That's one of them, looking out the window on the left. This is what I have to say. If I can make myself laugh, I've succeeded. So here's the view out the window. It's a newspaper, as you can see, and it's they're not contiguous, really. The one I included the rainbow. You remember everybody had rainbows up and be positive and all those wonderful things. We don't see them anymore, but that was just, that's a little nod to the era. And the lower right quadrant there says American Dream back there in on a big billboard back there. It's some enormous hulk of a thing on the New Jersey Turnpike. Anyway, it says American Dream. I don't usually comment on what's happening in the world, because I find being able to be in the studio and create my own worlds is a much nicer place to be. So all of this, these, I'm laughing because that's the back wall, and I have lots of postcards up of other work and things I like, and they're interpreted there as just little scraps of paper. So I think that's pretty hilarious, really. So, and obviously not a takeoff on the stuff on the table, the thermos, the paper towels, the little cup with ruler in it, etc. These are 9 by 12, and they're on masonite, also recycled from a different era. I had done mixed media, oh gosh, years ago, in a whole other way, and just decided to gesso over a bunch of them and draw into the wet gesso. Gesso is a what is gesso? It's some kind of what is it? It's, help me out here, people. Limestone. It's not limestone. It's some kind of compound from the ancient days, like the Renaissance, that covers a canvas and makes it non-porous. And you can gesso anything and paint over it. It'll be non-porous, and you have a nice clean surface. But so I'm drawing into the wet gesso, and so kind of scraping up what's a little bit of what's behind from the old stuff. I do like the idea of layers and slight transparencies to be able to see what's behind, because I feel that that's the human condition, that we all have all these layers. So here you can see the pencil work and the bumpy surface, that's whatever was behind there. And so do the drawing on the gesso, and then use these this fluid acrylic that come in these little bottles that are just so lovely to work with. And so this was a series like in June, and I just had a wonderful time doing one after another, just making it up. This has a little oil pastel in it. I don't know if you can see that, but kind of creates another kind of surface background. Yeah, they have this one. So often, I mean, it's the basic same things. There's a vessel shape, a vase shape, there's a tabletop, there's the diagonal lines, a bowl of something that's usually oranges or some kind of round fruit, and a container with some stuff. That one is called chips and fries because it looks much more like chips and fries than fruit or the pencils that were in that little container. Right, and
Fran,
yes.
I was going to ask you, since a lot of your shapes repeat themselves, do they have a symbolic meaning for you?
That's a great question. When I was back in the 80s doing the still life, I had a, and I still have it, a kind of a compote, you could call it, kind of a stemmed bowl, and it felt very female, and it kind of represented maybe me, I don't know. But the vessel shape is so ancient and everywhere, ubiquitous and forever, and inside, outside, humble, from the beginning. So there was a while when I was doing a lot with ancient language, sometimes Hebrew, sometimes, I mean, like I have a book on cuneiform, which I just think is amazing, those shapes in clay. So there is something archetypal in that shape. So thanks for that question. And the flatness now, I'm not trying to create real space. It's some kind of space, but it's not real. And you can see, I don't know, well, you probably see that the big orange vase is collage, but so are the red fruit and the little blue vase and those flowers that are that are detached and floating are from a travel catalog. So they have places you can, if you look up close. I mean, things like that are just so funny and so much fun and enjoyable, and why not? So it's like, hey, I can have a lot of fun now. Yeah.
Was it always fun, or was there times when it wasn't?
It's a good question for everyone, right? Right? Well, no, sometimes you get really overly worried or serious or questioning and doubtful and all those things. One of the reasons I left painting oil on canvas was and embraced the paper freedom was that it just wasn't fun. And once I got into the mixed media, it was in a workshop, a 10-day workshop. It's like, oh my God, that was a watershed event. It's like, I'm free. It's like, I knew this had to be fun. I remember using all this stuff. I love this stuff. So I felt very liberated. So it's nice to be back on canvas and have fun with it. These are, I think that has to do with age too. So I just want to put that in there. That's one of the great rewards of doing this long enough that it's like, okay, I'm doing this. This was a big drawing. These are 6 in this series, and it was, I guess, about 22 by 30. And I really loved the surface and all these lines and things and stuff. And it just sat there for quite a while, years. And in this COVID time, I was just like, let me see what's down here and I'll just use it. So I cut it up, and things become instantly better when you cut them up. I mean, you can't do that with everything, of course, but and then these little vessel shapes, also cut from patterns, little patterns, were, I was just having fun doing those using magazine paper. Some of it is my own paper, but some of it is magazine paper and from art magazines, and some of it is artwork. So I'm appropriating, but they look very different. And whatever appealed to me, the color, the surface, etc. And so then I made these 6 with, I think the series is called Rediscovered. Right. That one is called Flight of Fancy. I don't know about that title, but it's okay.
It's a great collection, Fran.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.